Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Mind Movers. We're in season 2 and we're really excited about the guests coming on today. Today we have an amazing guest, Paul Sculfor. Did I say it right then, yeah?
Yeah, you said you're fine the first time.
Fine. Okay, fine. Paul and I have known each other. In fact, we didn't, spend a lot of time together growing up, but I almost have known you for like 10 years because I met through your partner, who's an incredible woman who's working for an incredible brand and doing amazing things. And Paul and I got on really well. And do you know what? One of the conversations we had, I don't know if you remember this, is about sobriety. So I had told you that I was teetotal and I'd been teetotal my whole life. And you were also teetotal. So that's what struck up the conversation. Obviously, it's very interesting. Fast forward 10 years, I think that you saw that I did a podcast with Arta.
I did, the lovely Arta.
Yeah, you remember Arta?
Great guy, yeah.
So through that, Arta connected us, and obviously I've been following your journey, Paul, back in the day on Facebook, may I add, not just not just Instagram. And I've obviously noticed, the changes that you've made in your life, what you're doing. I knew you when you were a model, and then watched your transition more into kind of the wellness space. I hate using the word wellness, but you know what I mean. The space that benefits our mind and our body better. That's the way that I like to put it. So welcome, Paul. It's so lovely to have you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Payman.
Thanks for coming. Yeah.
Nice to be here.
So first of all, I always like to start from the beginning and, where it all started. I know about your past, what you were doing before modelling, etc. But do you want to tell us a little bit about where you came from and how you ended up, where you were just before what you're doing now, because that's the future. But, a little bit about your past growing up.
Cool. How long have you got? It's been a while.
Tell us the juicy parts.
There's a lot of them too. I am a rare Londoner, born and bred. I was born in a hospital in Dagenham, but brought up in Upminster. And if you don't know, Upminster is the last borough east. It's really lovely, little Victorian town, golf course, tennis clubs, lovely. It's like a little commuter town. And that's where I went to school and was brought up there.
Amazing. And then what happened?
Well, it depends how much you want to know. I went to school there, and which was nice. It was a good school, but I had quite an interesting upbringing in the sense that my father wasn't around a lot because he was working. So I was brought up mostly with my mum and her friends, and had a difficult time sometimes with my dad. So as younger, I was quite an anxious child, quite a self-conscious child, and I used to spend a lot of time. We actually lived in the last house in London before you went to the fields and the woods that broke out into Essex. So I spent a lot of time there. But I was fascinated with sports, cars and motorbikes.
Classic boy.
And I spent a lot of my time desiring cars and motorbikes when I was a kid. And I was of the generation back then where we were the first kids with BMXs. So we used to throw our backpacks on and just ride off for hours. So I spent a lot of time outdoors, spent a lot of time moving and being physical. I became a gymnast, which
Amazing.
I loved. I loved it because I liked the feeling of flying and moving, and I would probably have been diagnosed with ADHD now because I was one of the kids who couldn't sit still. And so I became a gymnast, very successful. Became a trampolinist, which I was very successful at. I became a footballer, which I was horrendous at. Played in defence, played football. So I think I had in my mind at the time, a very normal upbringing.
Yeah. Amazing. So you don't think your past necessarily impacted you in a certain way? Childhood?
It depends what certain way you mean.
Well, you said your father wasn't around. So
Yeah.
What do you feel your relationships were like then after that?
Well, the environment I was brought up in, there was a lot of drinking. I come from a family of boxers. My dad's side were dockers. So it was a very manly environment. And I was quite sensitive as a kid, and I found that quite abrupt. But I learnt to live and put that armour on and be in that environment. But when I started to box, I first went. My father's cousin had a boxing club. Two of them actually had boxing clubs, and I went there when I was 12. And he basically said, "Would you like to have a fight?" And I said, "Sure."
Yeah.
Just not having no idea, thinking
Yeah.
I'll show my dad that I'm okay, and just got my ass whooped around the ring, and couldn't work out how this guy was so nimble on his feet and could move around so well. Because before then, I thought boxing was an aggressive sport, and you had to be like really angry. It's completely the opposite. It's an art form. So after that humbling experience, I asked my dad if I could box, and he took me to a local boxing club. They're always in pretty rundown areas. We went to Dagenham, and I started to box, and I loved it. I really, really loved it, because I realised that when you become good at something like that, it takes away a lot of your fear. You don't have to prove anything. Where before I was quite fearful of angry people and loud voices and stuff, because my dad was very loud and had a wonderful temper. When he used to come in, the dog used to run out of the house, so you knew that, probably a good time to leave. But I'd like to say that I have a good relationship with my dad. He's a good man. He just had a very hard upbringing and didn't have the toolkit. So I found it tough early on, because I really wanted to be my dad's friend and please him when he was around. So I probably worked a lot in that area. How's that affected me later on in life? I realised you don't have to do that. And I realised that all the judgment I had on my father, all I had to do was look at his upbringing, and actually from where he came from, he grew tremendously well, but was still probably outdated for the time when I was born,
I think it's interesting because, I always ask this question about the past, and I have a therapist. We literally had my therapist on the podcast, and I'm very interested on how your past shapes who you are. And obviously, as you know, there's two groups of people, right? The people that end up being just like their parents, and the people that end up being completely opposite to their parents. And like you said, the older generation, our parents, they didn't have the toolkit, like my parents grew up in the Middle East, and, they're like on survival mode, like country might go into war, like we don't have time to be depressed, and that was the mentality that I grew up with. And I think that understanding mental health for my parents was more like, if you've got depression or anxiety, there's an imbalance in your hormones. They didn't really understand that actually your environment has a huge impact, or your past, etc. But also what I'm finding really interesting when I hear you speak is about the boxing. And, Payman and I have spoken to a lot of people in the sports space, particularly men, and recognize how healthy it is to have a sport. And like you said, stereotypically, people are like, boxing's a really aggressive sport. I even think that, you see people being beaten up. But I've spoken to some boxers, and they say, actually, that release of energy and emotions in the ring makes you a much safer and composed person in real life with your emotions. Like, I have a friend, he boxes every morning, first thing when he gets up, and he's like, I have that gush. And he's like, and as a man, he's like, I feel that's actually really important. And he goes, and then later on in the day, he goes, I really find it easy to control my temper as a result of that habit that I formed every day,
I think there's a difference between boxing training, which is very, very healthy, because it helps you obviously with eye-hand coordination. You work every part of your body if you do it properly, and it's physically tough, but it gives you an appreciation for things. And the discipline's really nice. And I think when you're in the ring with somebody, and it's just you and them, it doesn't matter what goes on the outside.
Yeah.
I remember having a fight. If you're an amateur, the British Championships are usually held in York Hall in East London. Mm-hmm. And I remember having my first fight for the British Championships. I was 15. I only had 7 fights. I won 7. But I was fighting a guy from a club, West Ham club called Repton Park, which is the best for guys, really, or one of the best. And I was in a small club out in at that time, a place called Howard Wood.
Yeah.
And there was no one else for me to fight, because I'd fought everybody. So they put me straight in for the championships. And I remember my old trainer, Roy. He was great. He was like the old guy from Rocky. He's like, okay, kid. He said, you're not going to outbox him, but you can beat him. I know you can. And it was interesting. So I fought the guy. He was currently the British champion, and he had, I think, 64 fights on his belt and won most of them. And it was really interesting because he was right. The guy outskilled me, but I hurt him so much that he couldn't go on to fight that night. So the idea was that whoever won that, you fought again in the evening, and then you won the championships. And because he was from a big club, popular club, he won. But there was an uproar because basically I beat the guy, and then he couldn't box for a while because he got really hurt. But then I understood the industry then, because I didn't win either, because it was this guy's, had to win at the point. And so I gave up for a while. Yeah. Because I didn't like the business around it. But as a person, it really was interesting because on paper I shouldn't have been able to win. Yeah. And it was a really nice battle, I guess, as a young kid that had a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear about things, to know that I can stand on my own 2 feet. Yeah.
So, Paul, would you say looking at your story, becoming one of the world's top male models.
Yeah, we want to talk about that.
There's a disconnect between that and the self-conscious child. So was boxing the
tell us how the modelling started.
The modelling started, my mother sent off a photograph to a competition which I didn't know about. This was in 1991. I'd been approached prior at the King's Road. I used to go shopping down there when I was 20. And this lady had come up to me and said, "Oh, you should be a model." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." Yeah. Just carried on. And she insisted. She's like, "Look, I'm a photographer. Can I take some photos?" And I said, "Sure, why not?" And she literally had a camera. So we took some pictures, and she had phone numbers, and I went back and saw them. It was actually pretty cool. And she took me into a model agency called So Damn Tough at the time, which was like a kind of working man sort of place. And it was all the rugged guys like boxers and whatever. And they wouldn't take me on. And then she took me to Models One, where Davina McCall was the head booker at the time. And I didn't have great skin. So she said, "Well, we'll wait and see for a little while." And then they phoned me a month later and said, "No, it's not worth you coming in." So that was my first experience of model agencies. Then my mum sent off this competition, and it had, you can win a holiday and you get a wardrobe of clothes. So I thought, that's perfect, I'll do that. And I was in hospital at the time having my appendix out. So as soon as the end of the week came, I just went to this thing. I still had stitches in. And it was at Limelights. Penny Lancaster, Roger Stewart's wife, come third. And I won. I couldn't believe it. There's all these really handsome, chiseled guys in there that really looked the business. And I just went in a pair of black jeans and a white T-shirt. I had no idea what it was about. And there was a boxer called Gary Stretch, who used to be a model. And he was on the thing, and we started talking. And basically, it's like, you should win this. You're a good kid. Anyway, I won it. And they kept phoning me for a month saying, do you want to start working? Do you want to come in? And I was
Were you a builder at the time?
So I was never really a builder. How that come around, I did do construction. I did double glazing and suspended ceilings. But how that come around is, at the time, I wasn't doing anything. I was probably being a bit of a naughty boy. And they said, "What do you do?" And I said, "Oh, I'm a builder." Yeah, that's what I do. It's the first thing I thought of. And it just stuck, basically, because they put that in the papers. And I finally went up there and went for a casting, which I had no idea about, and got the job. And that was my first introduction. It was very, very foreign to me. I had no idea what I was doing. But I had a wonderful agent called Tandy, and she's like a pit bull. And she's like, "Right, kid, what you're wearing, you need to change." She took me shopping. She said, "This is what you're wearing now. This is your new style. And this is how you have to be when you turn up on the job." So that was the first.
How long did it take from that to catwalks and model shoots? And
it was a very short period of time. I think probably it took me about 2 months to get my first job, which was a magazine. And then I remember getting a Speedo job for Trunks up in Manchester. And then after that, I did a thing called the Clothes Show Live. So, funny enough, is it Warren Avenue? Where are you from?
Warwick
Avenue. Someone used to have a house there that used to do casting from. and she would do the shows. So I went to this casting, and she said, "Can you dance?" I was like, "Yeah, of course I can dance." She goes, "Okay, we're doing a closed show live." I'm like, "Yeah, fine, whatever." And when I got there, I didn't realise it was choreography because I've been a gymnast and trampoline, so I could move. So I basically blagged the job, and then the next thing we're doing 8 shows a day up in Manchester, or wherever it was, and learning how to dance with the other guys and stuff, and it was good.
Question for you though, because I hear this. Do you think that you just fell into it with modelling? Or do you feel that subconsciously, I hate using the word, but everyone loves it, so buzzword, manifest. Did you feel that you subconsciously manifested? And obviously manifesting is thinking about something that you really want, and then, it kind of comes your way when there's preparation and opportunity, and I guess we can call that luck. Or do you genuinely feel like these opportunities just came your way and you thought, oh, actually, mine must be quite good looking, a lot of people asking me to do this, what do you think it was?
2 points to that. I think I never thought about it before. I saw one guy once on Davies Street in Mayfair who looked like a model. I thought, wow, he looks impressive, he looks really cool. And my mum used to get a catalogue, and there was one guy in the catalogue in the motorbike section that always used to wear the leather gear, and he looked really cool. And his name was Zame O'Donnell, and I did my second job with him, which was bizarre. But when I started, I would say that I manifested it in the sense that I really wanted to do well. And I really wanted to do well was because my upbringing, we didn't do much. I felt quite bored with it. It was very local and a small kind of London mentality. So as soon as I started to work abroad and meet different people from different places, it blew my mind. And I was so hungry just to have the knowledge of life that, yeah, I basically travelled for 8 years and stayed no more than like 2 months in one country. So I'd be in Paris, knocking on doors, and back then, you would literally physically go to see a client, knock on the door, give them your book, have a chat, leave, and go and see another one. It was such a busy business. You would literally go and see 8 or 9 clients a day. So I'd see 8 or 9 clients a day in Paris, and then the jobs, you would have a month or 2 months full of jobs happened, or a couple of weeks. So I'd seen everybody, so I'd say to my agent, right, I'm going to Milan. I'd do the same there, and I'd work, and then from there I'd go to Athens, or I'd go back to London, or I'd fly to New York. So I constantly drove the business myself as much as possible. So I wouldn't just sit there and think, well, nothing's going on this week, I'll just hang out. I'd phone up and say, where's busy? What's the market doing over there or over there? So sure, I manifested it in the sense that I wanted to do it, but I put the work in. I don't think that you can sit in your house, desire something, and not do something about it, and it will happen.
You know what? And I also think there's something to be said about self-belief as well. I was listening to a manifesting podcast the other day because I'm going through a transition stage myself. And someone said that you could say, like, you think you really want something, but there's also part of you that thinks you don't deserve it, and you actually prevent yourself from getting it. And I thought that was a really interesting point as well. I'm not saying you should be self-congratulatory and say, like, I'm the most amazing person in the world, but it's also having that innate belief, which is really hard, that I deserve to do well because I'm willing to put in the work and I'm willing for good things to come my way. And I think that that's a really important part of it as well.
I think there's another part to that.
Yeah.
I think some people believe that they desire something, but they actually really don't, because they think they either have to have it, or they think that they would be appreciated if they have it. So I think there's another element to that.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to be an actor at one point. And I studied for 3 years, Myers and Technique, and I went into the industry. And it was mostly because people were saying, oh, you're great, you've done so well, you've done so many TV commercials and worked with a lot of directors, you should do TV and film.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, maybe I should do this. And I lived in the States, like I said, and I went to castings and auditions for movies, and then I realised it's a completely different business from modelling. And I was very fortunate because I'd done so well in the modelling, I knew people, I could just go straight to another agent, which I did. So I bridged across. But it's a different business. It's completely and utterly a different business. So I managed to I actually sat there and I said to the universe, let me get 3 movies to see if I really like it and to see if I am a good actor or I can do a job. And literally within the 6 months after, I had 3 movies come up, which was
Wow.
bizarre. And I did them all. And at the time, I was going through a change, but I really was observing what was going on. So it wasn't, when I started to model, I was just blindly doing it and really pushing to get the job. Where with acting, I was unsure if I wanted to do it properly. So I was watching how it worked and the whole process, and enjoyed engaging and doing what I was doing in the movies. And I had the experience. And I remember we had the premiere in Madrid of this movie I did called DD Hollywood. And it was amazing because we came out and was being a film star for 5 minutes, and we were signing autographs. We got a really good picture of it down the thing. And I used to have a big market in Spain anyway for modelling, so I had quite a following. And it was just I kind of experienced it as like being a movie star for this moment. I thought that was amazing. And I went back upstairs to my room in the hotel and just sat and had a cup of tea. Didn't go to the after party. And I was like, that was amazing, but I'm not sure if that's what I want to do for a living.
Interesting.
What about going from the East End boxing
Yes.
to suddenly being this
That's exactly,
super
yeah.
successful model? Did you have loads of sort of pinch yourself moments? Like what comes to mind when I say, amazing moments in that period?
Oh, there's definitely amazing moments, but I think putting all the effort in, it wasn't like, I don't know, I've never won a lottery. Someone winning a lottery going, oh, that's great, I'm rich now.
Yeah.
It wasn't a switch like that. I still had to learn what I was doing. But there was moments, I remember my first job in America was down in San Diego. I'd never been to America before.
Wow.
And we were staying in this beautiful hotel, amazing production team that took us all to the incredible locations. And then I'm working next to some really cool California surfer dudes. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. That for me was incredible. And then there's been jobs, I worked with an incredible photographer called Bruce Weber. And my first job with him was the Banana Republic campaign. And they were just trying to bring the company up. And there were 60 models. We went down to Montauk in Long Island. It was beautiful. And in this $20 million home, all Winnebagos around, food everywhere, amazing cars. And I was like, wow, this is just another level of life.
Having said that, though, you've obviously, there was a huge transition into your lifestyle. Did your mental health ever plummet? And did you ever use coping mechanisms? We also know that the Hollywood lifestyle and the fame and the fortune, comes with the dark side. And there's certainly a massive element of self-soothing, where people escape, their own reality, even though it's meant to be on the outside, like this perfect reality. So was there a transition in your mental health at any point?
I think I realised early on that there's a show, and the show is, when you see movies, all you see as a normal person is the red carpet, the lights, the stuff, and you don't see that there's been 4 years of work going into that. So I think by that time I knew there was that side of it, but I didn't realise how cutthroat it was. And for me, I was very close to my mum, so when I was modelling initially, I used to fly back always to sit with her and see her. And I found that very grounding and reassuring because you can lose yourself very easy. If you're away from your stable, whether it be a family or certain friends, you can definitely lose yourself. Self-soothing, I don't know about that. I ended up drinking a lot and partying a lot. And I think that was trying to fill a void, but I didn't know what the void was for at the time. So I would work incredibly hard and party just as hard.
Yeah. What do you think the void was now in hindsight?
Probably a misconnection with myself.
Yeah.
I think in a lot of times in life we're taught or we see other people's behaviours and we're marketed that if you have this handbag or if you have this car, if you live in London, and then when you're in London it's if you live in this area, and if you're in that area it's live in this street, and then it's what building you live at and what apartment you live in that building. So it can go down to whatever, and that's endless, because then it's, okay, I've got the apartment, but do I have the Gawny wallpaper? Have I got, whatever kitchen? And it's never ending. So for me, It was about, I studied Tai Chi for 5 years when I lived in LA. I learned a lot about meditation. I did lots of yoga. I did a lot of time on my own. So this is how I learned to deal with stuff. I always loved girlfriends and having a lot of time with people. So I started to get agitated if I stayed in a hotel room on my own somewhere. And I was like, what is that agitation? Why am I agitated? I should be fine. And I needed to be around people. So what I did, which I wouldn't recommend, I took a year off dating, texting any girls, looking at any girls. And if I did engage at work, I was very polite, but just short, and was not going to engage in any flirting or anything like that. So for a year, I spent really kind of on my own.
Yeah.
Didn't watch TV, watched some movies, read books, and it was really interesting. And from doing that, I realised that I found myself through the fear of doing what I didn't want to do. I didn't want to be on my own, so I thought I better be on my own.
Yeah.
So spending that time gives you the space to see what the truth is.
Do you know, I think that people have such a fear of being alone and being on their own. And I see it even with like people that I know in my immediate like friendship group or people, and they're like, they come out, they're serial monogamists, as I would call it, or they always have like the next person lined up before they fully break up with another person. And they might preach like, oh, I want to be on my own. I have to spend time on my own. But it gives them such intense anxiety. And they're like, well, I can't help it that this person has come along, because it's actually a really difficult thing, because it forces you, like, I love spending time by myself. Like, I'm happy to have the house to myself, as you said, like put a cup of tea, read a book, etc. But I also need to feel that there's someone there. Like, I really struggled to be on my own, and I think it's something that people don't really talk about or are happy to admit to, because as you said, it's really sitting with yourself. And now that we have our mobile phones and our devices, we're never truly alone, you know, because even if you, for example, don't go on dates or don't flirt with people, you've got access to dating apps or Instagram,
But
or you can
that's
check
not-
out people.
That's not
Being on your own.
There's a difference between being diverted from yourself and being distracted
Correct.
to being on your own.
Yeah.
And I really recommend it, because it's a blind fear. So you're willing as a person to date the wrong person for however long in the wrong circumstances. So you're putting yourself second and wondering why you're not happy, and wondering why you have to be distracted to pick up the phone or whatever because you can't sit with yourself. And if you sit with yourself, it's you. It doesn't matter where you are, who you, if you're still with yourself. You can be in a room. I used to have a friend of mine who's the best conversationist. You could go to any party and he's talking to everyone. And I just think, how does he do that? And I thought, I thought I was shy as a kid. I realised I was self-conscious, which is a difference. And what that means is if we're sitting here, and I'm thinking, Payman doesn't like my shirt. Oh, God, I should have a shirt that he likes. Oh, my God. Or, or whatever it may be. I am separating myself from you guys by thought, even in the same room. So I'm in here while you're out there.
Yeah.
So if you're self-conscious or you're thinking like that, you are separate, whether you're in a room with 100 people or no people. So if you get to know yourself, and then you get to know your thought process, then you can do something about it, and then you can join everyone in.
Would you say that's it's a crazy question, right? The secret to happiness. I've been sort of grappling, it took me 45 years to work out the difference between sort of pleasure and happiness. But now it's something I've really been hating going towards. But my conclusion is lower expectations. You're talking about be comfortable with yourself.
Yeah. What I learned.
Maybe my problem is expectations, and your problem is being alone. That thing.
Well, I'm a recovering addict, right?
So sorry, can you, to be more specific, as in, like, was it the alcohol or was it substance abuse, or what do you feel, what was the addiction for you?
So I'll tell you. So being a recovering addict, right? You realise that alcohol, drugs, relationship, shopping or food are but a symptom of someone who's an addict. So if you have a cold, you have a runny nose generally. If you get rid of the runny nose, you still have a cold. But if you get rid of the cold, you won't have a runny nose. So they're but a symptom, like we spoke earlier about the phone's a distraction because I can't sit with myself. So happiness, it depends what your understanding of happiness is. There's a difference between excitement, joy, elation, getting a hit of dopamine from something, or being happy with yourself. And how I look at that is that I don't want to be somewhere else or be someone else or be in a different space than I am at that moment. That's happiness for me.
Meditation helps a lot with that sort of.
It helps a lot, but it also, and people misunderstand what meditation is. Meditation is not stopping your thinking so you're in a Zen place. At the beginning, you have to observe your thinking. Therefore, you're separating yourself from your thinking.
That's right.
So I can sit here and I could say, oh, I did this podcast today. I was really uncomfortable because of whatever. Or I can say, I had a thought that I was really uncomfortable, but I was okay with that.
Yeah.
There's a separation, and that's a big difference.
When you were talking about happiness and, you know, being comfortable within yourself, I got asked yesterday, I was on a podcast and they were talking about body confidence. And I talk about my journey with body confidence. I had a difficult time at university. I was always in with the it crowd, you know, and having a great time, but I always felt like I didn't quite fit in. I come from a Middle Eastern background. It was a very like public school, boarding school mentality, and I never quite fitted in. And there were all of these different judgments on the way that I look. And I went through a very like sad period of restrictive eating where I was severely underweight and very unhappy. But also at the same time, because people would congratulate me on me being the smallest version of myself, I felt better because I got that validation. You know, it was a kind of horrible relationship that caused a lot of internal conflict. Anyway, now I'm fine. I would say I'm fine in terms of like, I love food, I enjoy food, I exercise, and I get on with it. But the question was asked, are you body confident? And I said, I don't think I'll ever be body confident. But I am okay with that, you know, as in I manage now, as in I manage my thoughts. And when I have a negative thought or when I have people commenting on the way that I look, on my appearance, my body, I manage it. Whereas before I would go into a state of total turmoil. And I don't know, but maybe you have the answer. Like, do you ever overcome the issues that you've experienced? You know, like you said with addiction, like you're aware that you had it, you've got coping mechanisms, but do you think that you can ever fully get over those things?
Get over the experience from the past or get over them currently?
I suppose in a way that, you know, could your addiction ever be triggered, or does the thought ever just stay kind of like prevalent in your mind sometimes? Do you ever think about it, or you're just like, I don't even think about it, I'm totally over it?
Two things you said about being body confident. Are you confident but unconfident about the body? They're two separate things. Or if you're a confident person, what's encompassed in that confidence? For me, I know that coming from a place of addiction where everything's extreme. So when I was 13, I've got pictures of me like 13, 14, 15. I was like 4 or 5% body fat, ripped, completely shredded and looked amazing. I was very confident about myself and everything. Probably cocky as a kid because you don't know the difference. And it depends what you're focused on. So if I believe that my body is everything, and as long as I look good, everything will be fine, then that's a misunderstanding of what's going on. Also about what you said about we all have differences in life, right? But you have to look at the similarities. If you can find a similarity, then you've got a common goal. So being a Londoner, from a working class or normal background, I could pull out so many things where I could have been the victim of stuff, but I choose not to. But certain things can bother me about that, whereas you could turn around and say, I was absolutely stunning, I had beautiful hair, I was fit, I was great. Most people are uncomfortable going to uni or college, etc., and I'm very lucky that coming from my background in this country and then going to be very successful and going to that place of study, which was amazing, and my friend group's incredible. It's an achievement where some people might not be able to even go to a school or something. So you can turn it all around.
Sure.
there is a pressure of how we look. Trust me, especially in the modelling world. And it was very sad. I worked not long ago in Turkey, and there was a girl who came on the job, and she looked. I mean, I saw her pictures, and she was stunning. When she walked on, I thought she just looked very, very unwell and unhappy. And you can always tell in the eyes. And I sat down and spoke to her. And basically, she said that her Milanese agent had told her that she's got to lose weight and size, and this is how you do it. And I said, well, what's this?
Oh, gosh.
She was having coffee, cigarettes, water and apples, and that's all she'd had for 2 weeks. Could you imagine? And I said to her, listen, it's not worth it. Just eat.
Yeah.
There's other ways of doing stuff, but eat. So there is a problem in that industry in that way.
And this is recent, right? Because I thought perhaps the narrative had changed a little bit with the no. So do you still think that the high-end modelling industry is very much what it was, for example, in the 90s?
Yeah. If you go to a job, if you're not, and the clothes have got smaller. So when I started, I was a bit small. I've got big shoulders, always have done. I like them. I'm quite proud of them. But I got a lot of, oh, your back's too wide. Oh, your shoulder's too tall. I was too short. I did my first show in Milan, and it wasn't on a catwalk. It was around the room of chairs, and it was for Kathleen Hamlet. And as I walked out, this guy literally went, oh, he's short, isn't he? I thought, I'm 6 foot. Bear in mind, the girl in front was probably 5'11" and had heels on and behind. I was like, oh. So I started to see that.
Things,
yeah, and it really does affect you. But that hasn't changed. So when I started, people were 40, 42 chest. Now they're 36, 38. Wow. So I went to see someone the other day, and all they had was sample sizes. I'm like 41, 42 now. I'm not going to fit in those.
Yeah. And what was their response?
Oh, right. Okay, well, maybe you can try the jacket on. I was like, I'm not going to fit in it.
Yeah.
So now I'm like, if it doesn't fit, it doesn't work. But if I still do modelling, so I did a wonderful shoot for Christian Dior for the Rake magazine, and I said, guys, don't get sample sizes. No one fits in them unless you're really young and slim, and I'm not. I'm quite a strong guy. So they just got my size, and we did a wonderful shoot. That was it.
So the onus on like your looks and your appearance, did that impact your mental health in any way? Because what I always think is like, gosh, online, particularly like with the younger generation, they place such an importance on a depreciating asset. I mean, now we recognize, and I believe, that all stages of life, we're beautiful in different ways. And I genuinely believe that, like 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, there's different like cycles in your life. But I worry because people that create a platform or go into industries where it's all about the way that you look, I worry, for the mental health, as you said, because this is an asset that changes and diminishes.
Yeah, you got to remember that not everyone's like that, right? It is a beauty industry, and there are things that sell and don't sell. But look at Kate Moss.
Yeah.
She's tiny. Look at Oliver Cheshire. You know Oliver Cheshire? It's just Che clothing. He's small. No one would work with him. And my agent, the same one that helped me, was like, I work with Ollie. He's amazing. I think he's like 5'10".
Yeah.
The guy smashed it. He done really well because he had someone around him pushing him that had a different vision. So it depends on your level. If you're general, you've got to fit into something. But as you make a name for yourself, as you become more talented in what you do, and it's not just looks, you have to know what you're doing.
What is that? As in, do you mean within the shoot?
Yeah, you have to know. Yeah, I mean, it's less now because you're digital, so you can like change things after. But initially, when you was on film, you did one Polaroid, you got that shot right, you would do 8 shots a day, right? So you needed to know as a model what material are you wearing, how does that hang on your body, what is the energy you're putting through. So everything comes from the eyes, like acting. So what are you portraying? What's the story you're doing? So there's a lot to it if you want to do really well. You can stand there and look angular if you want and just look happy in your eyes, and you'll get away with it. But to be really good, to really go to the top of that game, you have to be an artist in knowing what you're doing, what works, how do you move.
And the creative saying, now I want sultry or whatever the particular mood is, and you've got to try and.
Yeah.
I mean, you must be really good at this, right? Because for years you were right at the top of that game. But I think the question you were asking was more about, losing looks.
Yeah,
You
and
must
how
have
that's
seen that amongst the women more, right?
Yeah.
So,
Because men obviously are celebrated, as you said, for aging. And I have a friend actually who's a model. Now, I'm sure you know him, and he smashes it with his jobs as like Hugo Woodus.
Yep.
Yeah, so he's like someone that I've known for many years, and I always see him on the kind of like older grey beard, grey like campaigns, which is like the silver fox, type thing. But women don't, obviously, I mean, Payman and I talk about this all the time. Like, women are celebrated for their beauty in their 20s. If they're lucky, they might still have it in their 30s, whatever the going says. So, and obviously the industry, I don't see women really in that. You get either the really young ones or the really old ones. I don't see the in-between market at all.
Well, you're selling a dream, aren't you? In reality, I have a female friend of mine. She's 80 and she's so beautiful, so beautiful, and beauty really is from within.
Yeah.
You can have a really handsome guy with an 8-pack, best body you've ever seen,
Worst chat ever.
and he's got no personality. He might be a narcissist, whatever it is. It doesn't matter at the end of the day, especially in relationships, because once you shut that door, it's just you guys, and you've got to get on. And beauty really is from within. Like, I really learnt that in my industry. Regarding age, it's a young industry, but I think the grey fox is catching up for men because people don't have money before 35. I'm generalising around the world to 65. And if you go and ask a lot of guys in a members club in London or whatever, and say, "Can you relate to this picture of someone who's 19?" No, there was no correlation, and I think the industry lost itself for some time. Because it was its own ecosystem, and it never looked out to see what people would really want. As you get older, and you look at pictures of yourself, again, I'm generalising, it's a desire to be, I'm so young, I was actually really cool, I could move around and stuff. So there's a romantic idea where I think ladies want to be beautiful and keep their beauty. But if you learn to grow as a person and you have more interests than that, and you have more value than that, then you should change. Because I think in life, I can only speak from a guy's point of view. Early on, it's all about material, how much money we can get, how many
Women.
well, for some, yeah. And can I date these people? Can I go to that place? I'm going to this beach, I'm going to that party, I'm wearing this outfit, it's amazing. Then after, as you grow older or grow up, that wears off. And you realise that's not the answer. And then you go for relationships. How do I relate to people? How can I have a nice conversation or have fun with people? And then after that, it's experiences in life where we're going to travel together, what we're going to do. So I think unless you change your thought process or understanding, then you're not going to grow. Then you're missing the whole trick.
Do you think that when you entered the life of sobriety, did your friendship group and the people that you hung out with inevitably change, and the type of people that you found engaging in the conversations that you were having?
Yeah, absolutely. Because you kind of find your tribe. If you're a soccer player, you're probably hanging around footballers because you can talk about it. Play football or boxing or whatever. Or dentists, you probably hang out.
Dentists,
and
I'm joking. Yeah, go on.
Because you can relate to something. If you're partying and you like going out, your friends are going to be partiers. It's as simple as that. And you're going to go out and it was crazy last night and do what you did. Yeah. And I think everyone should go out and enjoy themselves, 100%. Yeah. But at one point, you kind of grow out of it. Or there's those that don't grow out of it, and they're just, you see the guy who's like 55 years old, 60 in the middle of, in the corner of a club, just trying to, and you're like, please.
Yeah. And
bless them, there's people that still do that because they're trying to capture that past thing again. So you have to grow individually. But for sobriety, yeah, for me, I had to change a lot of friends. Not that I made the decision to change, but if you're going to a party and you're not drinking, people get bored of it because you're not on the same wavelength.
I disagree.
Okay.
I'll tell you why. Because I've been teetotal my whole life. So I tried a drink when I was like 13, when everyone else started drinking. And I was like, I actually don't like the taste of this. And then when I saw more of my friends spiral out of control, lose themselves, become alter egos, etc., I was like, I don't like this. And then I had enough self-awareness, even at that young age, to be like, you know what? I think that I actually have anxiety, and I actually don't think alcohol will be conducive, nor drugs, to my anxiety. But I continued to go out because I loved music and I loved moving my body and I loved all those things. And I managed to stay up with other people. But having said that, because I never drank, there was never an expectation for me to be on the same wavelength as them. I think the only challenge was dating, because when I would go on dates, people be like, oh, she's not drinking and it's classic, can I buy you a drink? So I had to do the like throw the shot over my shoulder thing. Like,
you're a bit drunk on life, though, some people are repressed a little bit. So it takes getting drunk to be themselves.
Totally.
So what I meant an extreme about that. You're right. About being on different wavelength. When your friends go, oh my God, I love you so much. It's so nice. Don't tell me you're on the same wavelength. If you're out dancing and having fun with
she's like that when she's sober.
Different.
Calm down.
That's different. So you can't be on the same wavelength as someone who's crying into their drink and stuff. You're either going to be care for them, or you're going to go, okay, you're okay. But there's difference between what I mean. I was generalising. From going, I love to go out and party and dance and stuff with friends. That's different, and I can do that. But at one point, when they are either really slurring or they've gone on to substances, then I'm out.
No, you're right. You're right. Like, and then there is that point. I mean, I went to the very famous Chiltern Firehouse. It's my favourite. After I did my last podcast with you, it's my favourite hangout place. And I always say it's like going to a Great Gatsby party, because you go and you see everyone that's meant to be seen, and you see the celebrities, and I love to go as an observer, because as I said, like Great Gatsby, everyone's there and they want to be there, but no one actually cares about anyone else that's there. And if someone died, no one would be at their funeral, So I think it's such a strong analogy. And when I was there, I, saw like all these different people, but again, like they start going on to the substances and their personas change.
The thing is, Rhona, we kind of talked about this. You don't see plant medicine or some mushroom tea as substances.
Yeah,
but they are substances.
Yeah, no. But the thing is, I disagree, because I think that ultimately there are substances that I said are used for self-soothing and can be abused, and then there is plant medicine. You use the word medicine, and it's
abuse any chemical, right?
But personally, for myself, as I said to you, like if
as he was saying, it could be shopping.
Totally, and I'm sure you've read the work of Gabor Mate. I always bring him up on this, but Gabor would say that most people have some form of addiction, and it could be an addiction to watching the Twilight series, or it could be an addiction. We all have some kind of addiction, and that's why he really pushes society to reevaluate the way that we treat addicts and addiction itself. And it's super interesting. I follow his work very clearly, and I get what you're saying, but also I'm interested because from a medical point of view, I don't think that we integrate enough medicines that are actually conducive to our health. The type of medicines that pharma, for example, want to give to people are based on them being reliant and addicted to them, whereas something like plant medicines, from the research that I've done, you don't need to be addicted to those substances. Yes, there are highly
addictive. It's not good to be addicted to anything, right?
Yeah, totally. But it's also about intention, as you said. We've had people on this podcast that have talked about doing ayahuasca, as we've discussed, and there are people that abuse ayahuasca. I meet guys at Chiltern Firehouse that I've done my 18th ceremony. I'm like, okay, great. You're still like messing around here with a million women, like living a hedonistic lifestyle. But the point is, and then there's people that go there because they've had trauma. They want to confront their demons. They want to overcome stuff. So I think intention is a really important part of all of this with anything.
I totally agree. But I would say that the word addiction is, if you're not addicted to Netflix, you're happy to sit down and have a gelato and watch Netflix is comfortable, and you really want to see what happens in the next one. But you're not going to go and rob someone to watch Netflix or murder. So there's a big difference. A big difference. And in a place like Los Angeles, people would shoot you in a bad neighborhood to get drugs, money or something, to go and get drugs. That's addiction at its worst. Mm-hmm. That's at worst. Or there's a wonderful store near us that has some beautiful bottles of wine, and one guy keeps breaking the windows and running in there to take it and run off. That's an alcoholic who has addiction problems.
Yeah.
There's a difference between, it's really a big difference, and people should stop using the word addiction for when they're not addicted to something,
Yeah.
because they're not putting their whole family, they're not saying, I'm not going to feed my child because I'm watching this movie. Let it wait. They won't do that. That's not addicted. That's really enthusiastic about something they want to see.
Invested, yeah.
Yeah, there's a big difference. And I really believe intention, what you're saying, is a whole subject that people can see, look like they're doing the same actions in life, but the intention is the key to what they're doing.
But you've used the word addicted, so do you think that at some point your well-being and the substances around you or the relationships around you, you use that word, do you feel then that you were putting anyone at harm or just yourself at harm to get that hit, as it were?
No, well, it depends. That was a very broad question.
What I mean is, because you said, you gave the analogy, like, for example, no one's going to kill someone to watch the next episode of Netflix.
Yep.
But you have to use the word addiction carefully. So you said that you were an addict.
Yes.
So I'm saying, so what extent would it be? Like, how did you feel that the self-destruction or the destruction to others manifested itself?
So mine wasn't a destruction to others.
Yeah.
It was, I was a sole trader, as it were.
Yeah.
And why was I a sole trader? Because I didn't know I had addiction problems until I went into rehab, and I used to just travel. I'm not a horrible person. I'm a very kind person at heart, and I was very sensitive as a kid. But I think, going back to your first question as well, probably the reaction to a lot of that was to, you got to remember that alcohol is a painkiller, so are most drugs, right? Emotional painkillers and mental painkillers. And if you've got something going on inside that you haven't dealt with, you're going to have pain, or you're going to have a thought process that tries to divert you from feeling that pain. Hence why most people don't want to be themselves, right? So when you get to have the ability to face that to the core, then I believe that you arrest that addiction, because that energy goes. So for me,
was there a moment? I mean, you're saying you didn't realise that you were an addict, but then you ended up in rehab. So was there a moment where you did realise, and what was that?
Yeah, I got tired of. For me, I was just enjoying life, burning candle at both ends. I was told that if you're going to work hard, you should play hard, and that's what I did. But towards the end, I realised that actually there was partying, and then there started to be partying and consequences. Then there was partying and more consequences. Then there was a lot of consequences, and then I realised that I started to not want to leave my house. Like, I'm fearful of going to the shops, and I stopped looking people in the eye. Like, what happened to this person? I used to be a bright kid who really liked to engage with people. I loved to turn up at work, and there was a couple of times I turned up to work and I just didn't want to be there. I felt awful. I was self-conscious that they can see I've been out all night, and it just wasn't right. It just didn't feel right. From someone who wanted to be very successful in their career, this was now overtaking the drive to be successful and happy, because I couldn't sit myself. It was more about nothing worked anymore. And I had this great analogy that someone told me, that in 1954, alcoholism and addiction was graded as a disease and an illness in America. So you're born at dis-ease with yourself, or you get to a point where you're at dis-ease with yourself. So you take something from the outside and put it in, or a behaviour, so you're at ease with yourself. But at one point when that stops working, you're at dis-ease with yourself, whether you're drinking or not, and you're at dis-ease with yourself where you're drinking. So you are now completely at dis-ease with yourself. There's nowhere to go. And at that point, you have to make a decision. Am I going to go in and sort this out? Because this is
100%.
where I live anyway. No matter if you're in a big house, small house, you live in here. Or am I going to just go to the very end and try and be a rock star? So for me, it was tired of those feelings, tired of being just feeling really ill and unwell, and not wanting to do the things I used to do and behave the way I used to behave. And I had incredible shame and guilt, because I just didn't want to go out of the house, didn't want to engage. Started thinking, oh, no one likes me, but I wasn't phoning them. So your behaviour changes. And I started to make excuses. Oh, I can't go out because of this, or I can't go out because of that. And at that point, I was like, something's happening. I need to sort myself out. I've clearly come to the end of a carriage in this train, and if I want to go to the next one, I need to address myself.
And so what was the process? Was one session of rehab enough for you to change yourself? Or?
Yeah, so rehabilitation is great. It's an airbag.
So hold on. So you went to rehab at what point in your life? How old were you?
What age?
Yeah.
I went when I was 33.
Okay. And from the States? Was it in the States or what was the
No,
time?
I actually went in London. I was living in Los Angeles. I came back because my mum was not very well. And I came back, and also being in my home environment shone out that something wasn't well. Because like I said, when you're partying, you tend to be with partiers. But when I went back to my home environment, I stood out because that was different. And I started to get all the feelings and all the thoughts and process. So I went into... a friend of mine took me into a rehab. I went in there. I had no idea what I was going in there for, except I just was burnt out. And I really went in there for anxiety. I went in there for an anxiety disorder because I just was like this all the time. And whilst I was in there, I realised that actually I have been using substances and alcohol to soothe myself, words you used, a bit deeper than that, but it was basically just to try and take the edge off life, just so I could cope. And I said to someone, it was funny, I was running out the gate from this rehab to run down to a pub, and I clocked what I said, and I said to myself, if you go in there and you can have pints or some whiskey or whatever, then you can deal with what they're telling you about yourself. And at that moment, I had an aha moment. I thought, oh my God, I need something out to help me cope with life. And I thought, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be reliant upon anything outside of myself. So I went back in. I checked myself in for another 28 days. And then I did aftercare after that. And that took me on a journey of doing yoga, not to be physically fit, but to actually do yoga properly, meditation, tai chi.
Manage your state in a different way, right?
Yeah, but learn about myself, because what people don't do, we're in our bodies, and everything we do is on the outside. If I get that house, if I get that car, if I get this, I'll be okay. When I have that relationship,
And then you get it and you're not okay.
No, which is a great blessing, because then you realise, oh, I'm not okay, so something...
I mean, you also
inside.
dated A-list celebrities, and you must have seen that idea that, a lot of very successful people are very sad.
It depends on the person, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I think when you say they're sad, I think a lot of successful people can be lonely because other people can't identify with them. So you hear normal people, for example, saying, oh, I spoke to this celebrity and they was rude, or they have to have a car service, so they're stuck up, or they have security. What's their problem? Can't they walk around? But no, a lot of people can't walk around because they will get
They're too famous.
completely, pulled upon and let me know this, let me have a picture, and you become unfree. So I understand that process. So there's probably a loneliness in there because I love to walk around. I really love to be free. And I learnt myself early on. I used to get car service in New York. I used to love walking up to the ropes to the clubs and being let in and having my own table. But in hindsight, I realised that actually what I'm doing, I'm pulling myself away from people. I'm isolating myself. I'm in the back of a car, which is great because for the first 5 minutes you feel important, and a car service is good because if you need to get somewhere, it's fine. But I was looking at it the wrong way in the beginning. When I realised that, like I get the tube a lot in London, and I do like most people do. But for a long time, I wanted to drive or get car services. I didn't want to get on the tube. Now I love to get on the tube. I want to be in amongst the people. I want to be in life. Because
I actually prefer the bus, just saying. Love the London bus, top floor.
The 22's
I
fine.
love the bus.
But did you ever get famous enough that people were recognising you in the streets? And
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, in the 90s, 100%. Yeah, completely.
what's that like? Awful or amazing?
Well, initially, as a young man, I thought all of a sudden I've arrived. This is I'm self-important. This is wonderful, and it was a great feeling. It was a new feeling, and it was a great feeling because I'd never had that in my life before. And there was moments we was in a bar in Mallorca and we couldn't leave the bar because there was a load of screaming girls and stuff, and someone took us out the back. So it's so nice to have them experiences, and they're fun. But if that was became important for me for my life, I would have been incredibly sad, and I think it's dangerous for a person. So I realised I love my freedom and I love my anonymity, and I love to just wear whatever I want to wear, old jeans and t-shirt, and I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, if you go for a Starbucks and you can't get your Starbucks because people recognise you, that's an awful life, right? I mean, I always thought what would be amazing would be to have a very famous name, but not a very famous face. You know, like, I don't know.
It's interesting. There's actually a very a big podcaster online. She's amazing. I love her. Her whole profile is built on just without her face, and even when she releases her podcast, it's like she does a cartoon. It's a cartoon. Do you see what I mean? And then when people take photos of her, when they have her, she blurs her face out. It's quite clever, and they basically she's built her whole profile on what she has to say, not what she looks like, which I think is very smart.
Punk or Banksy or something.
Yeah,
that's what Sia did, wasn't it?
Sia,
yeah. So I think,
but there are jobs. There are jobs. I was trying to think of it. What are jobs that are where the name is more famous than the face?
Well, for example, I had
That's yours.
I have a friend of I got introduced to somebody that was a lawyer, and he owns the most famous law firm in the UK. And
Clifford Chance?
No, this is Mishcon de Rea.
Is he Mishcon?
Yeah, exactly. So anytime his name is seen, everyone's like, Mishcon. I didn't even really know who he was, but people were like, you know him? I was like, yeah, I know him. Do you know what I mean? I didn't think anything of it.
Like a DJ or someone,
Yeah.
I don't know. People probably know what David Guetta looks like, right? But the name is more famous than the face. Or, I don't know, Formula One driver.
Yeah. But having, Paul, also, you've had the privilege of working in an era where we weren't so reliant on digital and mobile phones and etc. Do you think it has become worse for people working, as I say, in the looks business because of online, because of what they're subject to? And also, do you think the traditional modeling industry is suffering as a result of online and also AI?
It's a big question. I think it depends on the person, because when you say subject to, you're basically saying the person's a victim, right? But you have a choice. We still have choices of what we want to do. I think that the internet and apps like Instagram or whatever have given people a platform that would never get one. Yeah. There's a positive
even
to that.
For me. That's what happened with me.
There's a positive to that,
yeah,
100%. And if you use that as a tool to do what you're doing, an incredible job, and have a great space, that's wonderful. If you're doing it just to show something like bags or whatever, and you're famous for doing silly things, I don't think that's a great way to be. I am lucky that I was in that era, because you had to know yourself better and your trade better at what you did. And it seems to me now that the person that shouts the loudest gets heard, and that's not the person who's the most skillful person. So there can be a bit of a difficult bias in that way. And I think there's a lot of, someone said it was quite funny, there's a lot of Instagram models that don't have agents, could never get an agent. And some of them done really well, which is great because it's given the platform. But some of them say, oh, I'm a model and I do really well, but they don't. And they're desperate to do that, and I think that's damaging to them. And I think the people that probably follow them have a disillusion of what it's really about.
I think you get that in dentistry as well. Payman will back me on this one. I went to go see Picture of Dorian Gray last week, and I have to say I hugely recommend it. It was one of the best plays I've ever seen. So theatre is my passion. Sarah Snook was a one-man band, so she's the woman in Succession. Don't know if you've seen Succession.
Yeah.
So she plays 26 roles. And if you know the story of Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde, about a young boy that's always celebrated for the way he looks. Eventually, someone gets commissioned to do his portrait. He's so mesmerised by it, but then it also hits him that, that he'll not always look like this. So he makes a deal with the portrait and basically says, I'll trade my soul to ensure eternal youth. Then he goes on to live an incredibly hedonistic lifestyle. Now, when you watch the play, they integrate modern day, and it was really interesting because Dorian Gray was kind of looking in the mirror, but they put Instagram filters, and it was a constant with the Instagram filters. And I was like, it's so interesting because obviously this is somebody that represents the epitome of narcissism, like Dorian Gray. And the more hedonistic and awful he becomes, the more he gets away with it because of the way that he looks. And I was thinking,
like the algorithm.
yeah, and for me, I think like we have so much of that now. Like people celebrate a lot of people online, and I think you're right. But I know that, for example, in dentistry, people are chasing the numbers and the fame rather than patient safety, skills, and all of like the traditional values. And I think
you must have been accused of that.
Oh, all the time. And that's why I made a huge promise to myself, like first and foremost are my patients. And Payman knows, like I've built a clinic with some of the best clinicians in the country, you know, and it's difficult working with like some of the best clinicians because they are all incredible at what they do. And I could have been taking the classic model where I built a clinic just based off my name. But I was like, no, I want my patients to get the absolute best. And I have been accused of that because I think people assume
because your Instagram is so successful, right? Did you ever think about cosmetic surgery, Botox, cosmetic dentistry?
I've had loads done, Payman.
Oh, no, you haven't.
I probably need some. Yeah, once there was a time where I was having a very bad time before I went into rehab, when my self-esteem just hit rock bottom, and I did go to see a surgeon. I said, "Can you just make me look like this?" Which I have my favourite photograph. Yeah, I have my
of yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
From a shot Versace campaign in Los Angeles with Bruce Weber, and it was just the best picture I've ever seen of myself. And that image had locked into my mind, and I used to look in the mirror with absolute hate, like, what happened to you? What have you done? So I went to see a surgeon to see. He basically laughed at me, and I'm very thankful for him, because had he not had morals and stuff, he could clearly see I was not well. He could have said, yeah, let's do this and charge however much he charged and stuff. And then he said, no, you don't need anything. And I was literally pleading with him at the time. He said, no, I'm not going to do surgery on you. He said, come back in a year and we'll talk about it. I never went back. I didn't need to. So that was because my self-perception was so low.
Yeah, like a body dysmorphia type of...
You can call it that. I don't know whether it was body dysmorphia. It was just a negative loop of thought processes where I was comparing myself to something at some point.
Correct. And I do that all the time, by the way.
So it's compare and despair, isn't it? As soon as you look at this is the thing. You see someone in a beautiful car or see someone you want to look like, it's a snapshot image, and then we compare how we feel to what we're seeing, and it's never going to be the same. It's always going to be a discord because you don't know what that person's going through, how they got what they got. And again, once you get there, you'll realise that, it's
not that great.
No.
But although this came up in dentistry, right? The question, there's a lot you can do in dentistry that damages teeth.
Right.
And so there are things like where you drill the tooth, porcelain veneers. You drill the tooth, and then you fit a veneer porcelain bit facing on the front of it. And of course, now you can do them minimally and so forth. But the question came up: would you do porcelain veneers on an 18-year-old?
No.
At the Global Dental Collective with Mehi. And the people were giving different answers, and everyone was saying no, no, no. And then someone, Sahil, said, "What if she's a model, and that's her livelihood?" It's a different situation.
Look, I understand and hear what you say, and like obviously I've had elective things done to preserve my youth, etc. And I've had my teeth done. I've had my teeth done as well, as you know. But I had something called composite bonding, and the reason why I had that done is because I had really thin eroded enamel. That was the reason. And I do have people, in my view, when people come to me and I genuinely don't see anything wrong with them, I'll have that conversation where I say, look, I don't think there's anything wrong with you, particularly if they bring up like an Instagram or TikTok trend and they're like, look what this person had, like, are my teeth wide enough, because I started talking about Margot Robbie's smile, and then I suddenly had an influx of patients being like, make me wider, like make me smile really wide. And I had someone, she had beautiful teeth, and I was like, listen, you don't need anything. Now,
but it's not a need, is it?
No, but listen, yeah, I get that. But what I'm trying to say is that there are some people that do have low self-confidence because of their teeth. And I would disagree with you and say, like, for example, composite bonding, everyone's like minimally invasive. I've seen plenty of non-minimally invasive composite bonding. And on top of that, removal of composite bonding is not minimally invasive. I just had mine all redone. It is not minimally invasive to like remove it, So I think that like anything that you do, it's a choice. And you, as Paul said, you have to be doing it for the right reasons. Like if you are trying to make yourself like you were in a moment in time, and I've had people like that, you know, people who are 60 and like, look at my teeth when I was 25, can I have that?
But this surgeon, right, could have said...
But you can't though,
wait a second,
realistically.
Could have said, he understands the risks, he understands the benefits, he's an adult, he's come to me and said, I want this done. That's consent. We've got to think informed consent, valid consent. These are legal terms for you agreeing to have something done. He could have said all that. He could have felt all that. Obviously, his bank balance would have gone up. I don't know what procedure you were after, but he didn't. He saw something. His spidey sense or something told him not to do it and advised him to come back in a year. What I'm saying is, you know, we've got a thing in dentistry called the daughter test. Would you do it to your daughter? And there is an element of it's not your choice, it's your daughter's choice. Yeah, if she really understands the risks and benefits and wants to go ahead, then it's her choice. But this guy saw something, and you're really grateful for him for not doing it, right?
Oh, completely, yeah.
So it's a really, you know, it's an interesting point.
I think there's something to be said though for like emotional intelligence. So you probably know from Fed as well. I always bang on about this, that there is a real lack of nuanced thinking and a multifaceted approach to medical care especially within the UK. So typically when you go to a doctor or a dentist and someone says, I don't like this, or I need to have this done, or I broke this tooth, they literally like see a diagnosis and then they treat the symptom. Whereas multifaceted approaches where we look at other things in life, like you said, it was your psychological condition, your stress and your self-worth that were affecting you needing to change the way that you look. A doctor that doesn't have emotional intelligence will be like, he's trying to reverse aging. Does that make sense? And to reverse aging, we do this. And it's a completely different way of thinking. And I think that this doctor clearly had the emotional intelligence, which I believe that I have as well, and people will say it's a red flag patient. I would actually disagree and say it may be more difficult to manage, but that's not the reason you shouldn't be treating it. You get to the core, and that's why sometimes I ask people, why are you doing it? Does that make sense? You know, like what is the reason that you're doing it? So I think that that's a really important approach within like the medical arena. One thing I want to ask you, Paul, as well, like I can hear and feel that you've done so much work on yourself. And that's so empowering, I think, for a lot of people, especially young men. Payman and I ruminate often about young men because we worry about the role models that are out there at the moment. And I think typically you would agree that a lot of the younger generation, you know, what's the one behind Gen Z? Who's behind Gen Z? Gen X? Y? Is that it? They're like even worse because they look online and they see these archetypal figures that display masculinity, for example, and they see it as, you know, being macho in ways that are like Johnny Bravo or something like that, almost like a caricature type, you know, person. But I feel worried because I think mental health with regards to men is not spoken about enough. There is still a huge stigma, and I don't think we're making much progress because, as I said, where are the role models? Where are the men like leading the way? And I think not enough space is given to these men. What's your views on that?
Ooh, it's a deep subject. It's I do mindset coaching, so I mindset coach a lot of guys, and I mentor a lot of guys, and I always have done in the industry as well, in fashion. Because when I was a younger man, I craved to have a mentor and I never had one. So I learned a lot of things by doing mistakes, which now I'm grateful for because it shaped me. But I really desired to have that. I love learning. I'm someone who just loves learning. I love people because you can learn so much from different people's experiences. And like the guys, it's funny because it's such a deep thing. Some of the guys I work with, I've worked with some of the toughest men in the country, actually. I've read books written about them. And we've sat there holding hands, crying, connecting on a level that it takes you. I used to think crime was weak. I was always told crime was weak. I remember one day I crashed my motorbike. It's probably about 13, and I took all the skin off the whole side of my body. And my dad was called. He came over. And I was clearly in shock because I was being sick and stuff. And he's like, pull yourself together, get up, get that bike home and shower you off. And I remember picking the stuff off in the shower, thinking, you know, it's not very, a bit of compassion won't go amiss. But that's how he was brought up. And that stood me in good because I've learnt from that how to be compassionate, especially with my girls. But going back to the space, it really comes down from your upbringing. You need to have, it's so difficult because everyone's different, but if you can find someone stable around you. So my idols when I was growing up was my grandfather, my mum's father, who was the only person left in his bomb disposal unit, and he was a really brave man. Never spoke about the war and losing. He lost loads of his brothers, and they got bombed out in the war and stuff like that. But he was always a smart, kind, strong man. There's a difference between being a masculine man or being a misogynist or someone who's trying to show aggression or whatever, because that's not true. A masculine man, I believe, is someone who is mentally, emotionally stable, has a protective side to them. Like a lion, if it needs to go and do something, it can, but generally is pretty calm. And there are people that are making space online because, it's a deep subject, but if you look at people like run the country, the government, they're not exactly showing you exactly how to be. So you're looking at leaders of the country acting a certain way, and that's not helpful. Then you've got some people on Instagram that are trying to prove something to themselves or sell something or market it. That's not true either. It is difficult. I always say to guys, a stable place usually for young men is something to do with sports, right? Even if you're not a sportsman, join a club of some sort, because usually if you're in a martial art, there's a discipline. If you're in boxing, there's a discipline. If you're into swimming, there's a discipline. Tennis, there's a discipline. And you'll find stability within doing something or finding something. I always think that, because otherwise you're going to be on a street corner, or you might just be hanging out in your castle, wherever it is, I don't know. But if you can find some stability around you, outside of your circle, if that's not stable, then that's a good place to start.
Yeah, amazing. I
Is
love
the
that.
charity that you're
let's talk about
involved
charity.
with to do with this?
Yeah, so our charity,
What's it called?
it's called Stride Foundation UK.
Amazing.
Grassroots. Federica and I sat down and
Your wife, right?
Yes, yeah. And she was talking about perspective of what do people do if they have drink problems or drug problems, where do they go? And we had this whole discussion at the time. If you couldn't afford to go into treatment, or you didn't want to go into a 12-step program, what do you do? So you could go and get a detox or something like that in the NHS, and then you go home and you're left with yourself. The whole point is about yourself. So we decided to set something up where we could help people get therapy, put into treatment, or get coaching. So we did that, and it's kind of, we set it up. We did a charity day at Jonathan Palmer racetrack, which was amazing. We did it with the Amy Winehouse Foundation, which was great. And then we had kids, and then life got involved. So it became myself just networking. And I was at a film premiere once, for example, and so a very important agent came over to me and whispered, so-and-so's got a problem. Can you talk to them? As a famous actor, so I talked to them and helped them out. So it became a real networking thing for me, kind of behind the scenes. And the only reason I came out and talked about addiction in the first place, because a newspaper group that we finished in court a few years back had published articles about my addiction problems. So otherwise no one would never know. But actually now it's great because I've got a platform to help others from. So we now are doing a pilot program where we've got ex-addicts recovering, and I'm 20. I haven't drunk for 20 years. I'm 20 years sober, so I've lived sobriety as long as I was when I was partying. Because a lot of people come in 3 months, 2 months, start telling everyone how to do it and what to do. I think you have to live it for a while. So I've lived all of that for a while, and I went back into modelling and lived that one sober, which is amazing. So what I do is we've got a school program where we go and do 45-minute talks, Q&A after. If anybody has an issue, or they have an issue with a parent, we can give them a therapist which we will fund for them to have therapy in or something, or coaching or mentoring or whatever. So that's what we're putting in place. It's very small. We're doing it small. It wasn't to change the world. What I found that people that helped me really focused on me and moved me through the places and helped me I needed to go and answered all the questions I needed. So we put a guy in 19 months ago that was in a very, very bad way. 52-year-old man. I actually knew him years ago, and when we put him into treatment, he'd had a stroke, a brainstem stroke, which is really bad. Survived it. When he came out, we smothered him with people that I know that have worked in sobriety and stuff, and he's emotional. He's now 19 months clean, sober. He's got his life back. He's really good. He helps other people. So it's like dropping a penny or a stone into a pool. The ripple effect is positive, at least to 15, 20 people around you.
Yeah.
So we wanted to focus on people rather than lots of people. So we're doing the school program now, which is great. And after we're going to run it for 6 months and see what the real feedback is and what the impact is. Because when I was at school, you'd get a policeman coming with a suitcase saying, if you take that, you'll die. If you take that, you'll die. And that was it.
That guy visited my school too.
Yeah. The problem with that is if you have a joint or something sneakily, you go, well, I didn't die from that. It's okay. I can.
Yeah.
So
it's a sort of honest conversation, isn't it? That says, look, there's the fun element. There's the amount of risk. But we knew in our youth, none of that was talked about, was it?
No, it was black and white. It was fear. It was fear stuff.
I mean, let's face it. It's fun getting off your face, right? You have to admit that. I mean, not that you would know.
Never done it, so I wouldn't even know, you know?
Well,
it needs talking about is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, the fun thing really, when you think about it, what is the actual fun thing, if you want to be boring in particular about it, is that you don't have to be yourself.
Yeah.
And if you think about the old sentence which people used to say was, I was out of my mind last night, I was out of my head, it's because you don't like being in it.
Yeah, exactly.
If you find
so
a place
true.
like what you said, I like dancing up, you like being there. It's a great place to be. So that's the bit that needs to be addressed at one point.
Yeah.
100%. Paul, this has been such an amazing, insightful conversation. I feel like I talked to you for hours, and I feel really privileged that you've come on here. And, you know, I definitely encourage anyone that does want to speak to Paul. You know, he has had one of the most inspiring career paths, and, you know, has become one of, you know, the most amazing coaches and amazing human beings. So thank you so much for joining us today. We've really enjoyed it.
I've got one final question, if you don't mind.
Go on, Payman.
If your daughters said they want to be models, would you give them your blessing?
After university, after they've got their studies, and if they are stable young ladies, then yes, I would. Not before they've matured enough to know themselves, no.
But the classic thing is they get
the classic thing. They get classic. Yeah, exactly.
So no to that, you're saying?
Yeah.
It depends. It completely depends on circumstances and what job. One of my oldest ones did do a little modelling job because it was with Federica, my wife, and I knew all the group, and it was great, and it was a healthy, fun shoot. So yeah, that's different.
Thank you so much,
Brilliant.
Paul.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
very much.